Looking back, I should have known something was wrong when Victoria started showing up to every family dinner in head-to-toe designer outfits. My future mother-in-law had always been fashion conscious, but suddenly she was wearing Channel suits to casual Sunday brunches and carrying a different Hermès bag every week. Mom's just celebrating her promotion, my fiancé and Mark explained when I mentioned it. Victoria had recently become CFO at their family's real estate development firm, a position that gave her complete control over multiple accounts, including our wedding fund. I'm a financial analyst. Numbers are my life. So when Victoria offered to invest our wedding savings to make it grow faster for our big day, every professional instinct I had screamed no. But Mark insisted we trust her. She's brilliant with money, Emma, he said. Look how well she's managed the company finances. That was 3 months ago. Now, I was sitting at the Hamilton family's massive dining table, watching Victoria dab at her eyes with a Versus handkerchief as she delivered the news that our $300,000 wedding fund had unfortunately been lost in a market downturn. These things happen in finance, she sniffled, adjusting her new diamond earrings I hadn't seen before. We'll have to do something smaller. Mark's father, Richard, looked devastated. That money was from selling my mother's house. It was meant to give them the perfect start. The market is so volatile, Victoria continued smoothly. Nobody could have predicted. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out my iPad. The market's been remarkably stable this quarter. In fact, it's up 12%. Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows twitched. Well, certain sectors. Which sectors exactly? I started tapping on my screen. Because I've been tracking the account. Every transfer, every withdrawal. Would you like to see where the money really went? The color drained from Victoria's face. That's private company information. You had no right to. It wasn't company money, I said quietly. It was our wedding fund. Money from selling Mark's grandmother's house. And I have every right to know where it went. Mark touched my arm. Emma, what are you saying? Instead of answering, I connected my iPad to the dining room's wall-mounted TV. A spreadsheet appeared, filled with transactions. Let's start with June 1st, I said, highlighting a row. $25,000 withdrawn. Same day, a purchase at Gucci for exactly that amount. I clicked to the next entry, June 15th, $30,000 withdrawn. That afternoon, a down payment on a new Mercedes. Those were legitimate business expenses, Victoria cut in, but her voice had lost its theatrical tremor. Really? The company needed 12 Chanel handbags, 3 Cartier watches, a 2-week spa retreat in Switzerland? Mark's face had gone pale. Mom. I kept scrolling through transactions. In 3 months, you spent $300,000 on luxury goods. Our entire wedding fund, gone to feed your shopping addiction. Shopping addiction? Victoria laughed, but it sounded hollow. Don't be ridiculous, I'm a successful businesswoman. Who's been hiding shopping bags in her office, I finished. Who has secret credit cards in her assistant's name? Who's been selling company assets to cover her personal spending? That last part made Richard sit up straight. What do you mean, selling company assets? I pulled up another document. 3 of the company's smaller properties were sold last month. The proceeds never appeared in the corporate accounts. Victoria stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. You've been spying on me, going through private company records? No, I met her eyes steadily. I've been doing my job. The board hired my firm 6 months ago to audit the company's finances. They were concerned about irregular spending patterns. I didn't want to believe it when your name kept coming up. The board? Victoria's voice rose an octave. How dare they investigate me? I built this company. Dad built this company, Mark corrected quietly. You just helped destroy it. Victoria turned to her son, reaching for him with manicured hands. Darling, you don't understand. There's so much pressure, maintaining our social position. These things, she gestured to her designer outfit, they're investments in our family's image. They're symptoms, I said, pulling up one final document. You've spent over $2 million in the past year alone. Money from our wedding fund, company accounts, and I paused, hating what I had to say next. From your mother's nursing home trust. The room went completely silent. Richard's mother had been in an expensive private facility for years, her care paid for by a trust Victoria managed. You stole from Grandma? Mark's voice cracked. Borrowed, Victoria protested. I was going to pay it all back, as soon as the next property sells. There won't be a next property sale, Richard said, his voice like ice. You're fired, Victoria, and the board will be pressing charges. Victoria's composure finally shattered. You can't fire me. I'm your wife. Mark, tell them they can't do this. But Mark was staring at the TV screen, at the endless list of transactions that had eaten away our future. How could you, Mom? That money was for our wedding, for our life together. Oh, please, Victoria sneered, her society mask falling away completely. You can't seriously still be planning to marry her? This little accountant who's been sneaking around, digging up dirt on her own family. She wasn't sneaking. Richard stood up. She was doing her job. Something you should have been doing instead of shopping yourself into criminal charges. Victoria grabbed her new Hermès bag, paid for with our wedding money, and backed toward the door. This isn't over. I have friends in high places. I'll show you what happens when you try to ruin May. No, Mother. Mark's voice was firm. You did that all on your own. After she stormed out, the silence was deafening. Finally, Richard spoke. Emma, I am so sorry. About the wedding fund, about all of this. It's not your fault, I said, reaching for Mark's hand. But there's more you need to see. Victoria's spending. It goes deeper than we thought. And if we don't act fast, there might not be a company left to save. The next morning, we met in the company's conference room. The board members sat grim-faced as I presented the full scope of Victoria's spending spree. The numbers were staggering. In addition to the $300,000 wedding fund, she's embezzled approximately $2.7 million from various company accounts, I explained, clicking through my presentation. Her method was clever. She created fake vendor accounts that were actually high-end retailers. So when the books showed payments to Hamilton Design Consultants, one board member began. That money actually went to Dyer, I confirmed. She had similar setups for Chanel, Gucci, and dozens of other luxury brands. Mark sat beside me, reviewing each transaction with growing horror. Look at these dates, he said. She spent $50,000 at Hermès the same day she told Grandma the nursing home was raising their rates and she needed to downgrade her care package. Richard rubbed his temples. Where is she keeping all these clothes? Our house is large, but it couldn't possibly hold everything. I pulled up photos of a storage facility. She has 6 climate-controlled units under her assistant's name. They're filled with designer goods, many still with tags. It's not just about wearing the clothes, it's about the thrill of buying them. A shopping addiction, one of the board members murmured. Combined with an extreme sense of entitlement, I added. Based on her credit card statements, she truly believes she deserves these things. The company's money became her personal slush fund. Just then, my phone buzzed with a news alert. I clicked the link and felt my stomach drop. She's gone to the media, I announced, turning my laptop so everyone could see the local news website. There was Victoria, perfectly styled in what I recognized as a new $12,000 Chanel suit, playing the victim. My daughter-in-law, a junior accountant, has orchestrated a witch hunt against me, she claimed in the article. She's trying to destroy my family's company because I wouldn't approve of her extravagant wedding plans. Mark laughed bitterly. Extravagant wedding plans? She's the one who insisted on $1 million venue that we never wanted. It gets worse, I said, scrolling down. She's claiming the designer purchases were all legitimate business expenses for client entertainment and company image, and she's threatening to sue for defamation. Richard stood up abruptly. Enough. Get me every receipt, every transaction record. We're going to the police. But Victoria had one more card to play. As we left the conference room, her assistant, the same one whose name was on those storage units, came running up. You need to see this, she said, looking terrified. Mrs. Hamilton just posted on social media. The video showed Victoria in what appeared to be a luxury hotel suite, surrounded by shopping bags. My darling friends and followers, she began, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. I need to tell you about the conspiracy against me. My own son's fiancé, jealous of our family's success, has fabricated horrible lies. Turn it off, Mark said quietly. We need to focus on damage control. But Victoria wasn't done. Within hours, she appeared on a local morning show, playing the role of the persecuted socialite perfectly. She wore another new outfit, purchased just yesterday, according to my tracking, and spun a tale of family betrayal. I just wanted to give my son the wedding of his dreams, she sniffed delicately into a silk handkerchief. But his fiancé, She became obsessed with our family's money, started making accusations. The company's phones began ringing off the hook. Social media exploded with hashtags like hashtag justice for Victoria and hashtag gold digger alert. Some of our biggest clients called, concerned about the negative publicity. "We need to fight back," I said, pulling up more financial records. Not with accusations, but with facts. I spent the next 6 hours creating a detailed presentation. Every transaction, every false vendor account, every stolen dollar, laid out in irrefutable detail. When Victoria's afternoon TV appearance claimed she'd invested the wedding fund wisely, I released bank statements showing the money going directly to luxury retailers. Then came the bombshell. Victoria's assistant, finally free from her boss's manipulation, came forward with videos. Dozens of them, showing Victoria ordering her to hide shopping bags, create fake expense reports, and lie to Richard about company finances. "She made me rent those storage units," the assistant explained tearfully. "Said she'd ruin my career if I ever told anyone. Sometimes she'd buy so much in one day that we needed multiple cars to transport it all." The assistant had more. Videos of Victoria trying on clothes in her office, ordering her staff to return items before Richard could see the charges. Even footage of her screaming at an employee who questioned a suspicious purchase order. "She's not just a shopaholic," the assistant said. "She's a bully who used the company like her personal ATM." By evening, Victoria's media campaign had backfired spectacularly. The same news outlets that had aired her tearful interviews were now running exposes on her spending habits. Photos emerged of her storage units packed with enough designer goods to stock a small department store. Mark found me in my office, surrounded by financial documents. "The police want to talk to her about the nursing home trust," he said quietly. "Dad's lawyer says that's felony theft." I reached for his hand. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted." "Don't," he said, squeezing my fingers. "You protected our family business. You protected Grandma. Mom did this to herself." My phone buzzed again. Another charge alert on Victoria's secret credit cards. Even now, with everything crumbling around her, she was still shopping. "She just spent $20,000 at Valentino," I said, showing Mark the alert. "She's not going to stop." "No," he agreed sably. "But we can stop her from hurting anyone else." As if on cue, Richard appeared in my office doorway, his face grim. "The police are on their way to the hotel. With a warrant." Victoria's shopping addiction had finally caught up with her. But the damage she'd done, to the company, to her family, to her own future, would it be fixed with a simple return policy? They arrested Victoria at the Ritz-Carlton, surrounded by shopping bags and wearing a brand new $7,000 outfit she charged to yet another hidden credit card. Even as the police led her away in handcuffs, she protested that everything had been a simple misunderstanding about business expenses. The media circus that followed was both spectacular and devastating. Headlines screamed, "Socialite CFO's designer downfall and shopping addiction leads to multi-million-dollar embezzlement." Pictures of Victoria's storage units went viral, rooms full of designer goods, many still with tags attached, representing millions in stolen funds. We found evidence of compulsive shopping disorder taken to an extreme. Dr. Matthews, the forensic psychiatrist assigned to her case, explained during the preliminary hearing. Mrs. Hamilton appears to have been using luxury purchases as a form of self-medication, but combined with her position of financial power, it became a perfect storm. The total damage was staggering. $3.8 million missing from company accounts, $300,000 from our wedding fund, $180,000 from her mother-in-law's nursing home trust, and over $500,000 in credit card debt hidden under her assistant's name. Victoria had been living in a designer-labeled house of cards, and it had finally collapsed. Mark and I found ourselves dealing with the aftermath on multiple fronts. The company needed immediate financial restructuring to survive the scandal. Richard threw himself into saving the business his father had built, working endless hours to reassure clients and stabilize accounts. "We're lucky you caught this when you did," the corporate attorney told us during a late-night strategy session. "Another 6 months, and she might have bankrupted the company completely." The most heartbreaking task was moving Mark's grandmother to a better nursing facility. The trust Victoria had drained had forced her into reduced care. But now we could restore her comfort. I knew something was wrong. the elderly woman told us as we helped her settle into her new room. Victoria used to visit wearing new jewelry, telling me the facility needed to cut back on services due to budget constraints. I just never imagined. Mark squeezed his grandmother's hand. You'll never have to worry about money again, I promise. Victoria's sentencing hearing came 3 months later. She arrived in court wearing prison orange instead of Prada, but somehow still managed to make it look like a fashion statement. Your Honor, her lawyer argued, my client suffers from a recognized psychological disorder. She needs treatment, not punishment. The prosecutor countered with surveillance videos of Victoria methodically creating fake vendor accounts and directing her assistant to hide evidence. This wasn't just addiction, he argued. This was calculated theft over several years. The judge was unimpressed by Victoria's tearful plea about being a victim of society's pressure to maintain appearances. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison in order to pay full restitution. You abused your position of trust, the judge stated firmly. You stole not just money, but people's futures, your family's security, your employees' stability, even your mother-in-law's care. That goes beyond simple shopping addiction. As Victoria was led away, she turned to Mark one last time. Darling, you can't let them do this to your mother. What will people think? But Mark just shook his head. I'm thinking about Mom, about the company's employees, about all the people you hurt while buying more clothes than you could ever wear. The aftermath brought unexpected healing. Without Victoria's toxic influence, the company flourished under new financial controls. Richard seemed years younger once the stress of covering for his wife's excesses lifted. Mark's grandmother thrived in her new facility. We did eventually have our wedding. It was smaller than Victoria's original grandiose plans, just family and close friends in Mark's parents' restored garden. I wore a simple designer dress that I bought myself with money I'd earned. During the reception, Mark's grandmother pulled me aside. You saved this family, she said softly. Not just the money, but the truth. Sometimes that's the greatest gift. The storage units full of Victoria's ill-gotten goods were liquidated to help pay restitution. Watching those designer pieces being sold off, I couldn't help but think about the real cost of each item, not in dollars, but in trust destroyed and relationships damaged. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, I received a letter from her prison counselor. Victoria had finally begun to acknowledge her addiction and its impact on others. She was working with other inmates, sharing her story as a cautionary tale. Maybe some good can come from all this, Mark said when I showed him the letter. If it helps even one person recognize the signs before it goes this far. We've rebuilt our lives without Victoria's designer drama. The company's stronger than ever, operating with transparent financial controls. Mark's relationship with his father has deepened. Our new house may not be filled with luxury brands, but it's filled with something Victoria's shopping addiction could never buy: peace and trust. Sometimes I drive past the high-end stores Victoria used to frequent. Their gleaming windows still display $1,000 handbags and shoes that cost more than some people's monthly salary. But now I see them differently, not as status symbols, but as potential traps for someone who can't separate wanting from needing. Victoria will be eligible for parole in 4 years. Until then, she's limited to prison-issue clothing and commissary purchases. Sometimes the highest price we pay isn't on the price tag, it's in the cost of losing everything that really matters.